Shocking reveal. How she transformed from heartbreak to inspiring true love in just 3 years. The door slammed shut as Sarah stood frozen in her little kitchen, the remnants of shattered trust weighing heavy in the air. Just weeks before her wedding, her fiancé had betrayed her in a way she never saw coming, leaving nothing but echoes of hurt and disbelief swirling inside her. The loss felt familiar, drumming up memories of her parents' illnesses, their slow departures that had robbed her of stability in life. How was she supposed to heal when the only family she had left had already been lost? She took a deep breath, fighting against the rising tide of anxiety, and stepped away from the scene of her heartache. Sarah continued her shifts as a nurse, pouring herself into others in an attempt to mask her own suffering. Each patient's pain became a tether for her existence, leading her into a role of compassion while her own heart ached in silence. Yet beneath the surface, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was merely existing instead of living. Every smile she forced felt like a mask, a poor disguise for the raw anguish hiding beneath. Could she truly give her patients what they needed while being haunted by her own grief? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. After her shifts, Sarah found solace in her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, whose soft voice offered insights that began to stitch up the frayed edges of Sarah's heart. But even Mrs. Jenkins couldn't shield her from the mounting dissatisfaction subtly creeping into her life. She began to recognize her identity as a nurse was becoming a battleground. Someone needed to hold her accountable, and those whispers of doubt began to morph into a cacophony of unsettled feelings each evening. How could she muster the strength for the emotional upheaval that lay ahead? In the midst of her struggle, a flicker of passion ignited at the community center when she volunteered to teach health classes. For the first time since the betrayal, excitement leaped in her chest. Advocacy felt liberating, a path that could usher in change while allowing her to dream beyond the confines of her past failures. But as she threw herself into public health, growing more engaged with every lesson, the specter of her ex-fiancé lingered, a romantic past tainted with the hurt, but laced with promise. When he showed up unannounced with charming words and vows of renewed commitment, Sarah felt the emotional tug-of-war escalate. Memories of laughter and warmth flooded her mind, piercing through the resolve she'd forged in the flames of heartbreak. Yet, just as vividly, she could feel the genuine connection blooming with Jake, her classmate. He believed in her dreams, in her mission to empower others, and his recognition felt like a lighthouse in her stormy seas. Caught between the remnants of love lost and the hope of something real, Sarah now faced the fierce reality of choice. Would she slip back into the comfort of what she once knew, or would she take a chance on something uncertain but promising? As she grappled with her conflicting feelings, the weight of expectation pressed down on her chest, tightening like a vice. Her heart raced at the prospect of moving forward, but also cringed at the thought of embracing the unknown as she stepped closer to that transformative decision. The days following her ex-fiancé's unexpected visit were filled with a whirlwind of chaos and contemplation. Sarah felt like she was drifting in a sea of confusion, where every decision felt monumental, each moment dragging her further into uncertain waters. Work became her refuge, a structured escape from the emotional tumult raging in her mind. Yet, as caring for her patients became automatic, she realized her passion was dimming. She was merely going through the motions. One late evening in a dim-lit patient room, Sarah had a breakthrough moment with a man in his late 70s named Mr. Thompson. He was a seasoned patient, battling the shadows of his own heartache, having lost his wife years prior. Their conversations often transitioned beyond small talk about medications and routines, developing into profound dialogues about loss, resilience, and learning to live with the absence of loved ones. It struck Sarah how much he understood her pain, and for the first time in weeks, she found herself opening up about her past, sharing her story of love and betrayal. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his wise eyes reflecting empathy. "Life is too short to be a spectator," he said softly. "You can't let fear dictate your happiness. You have a gift for connecting with others. Use it wisely." His words ignited something in Sarah, a desire to take charge of her emotional narrative instead of letting the memories of pain dictate her future. Riding on that inspiration, Sarah suddenly felt certain that not only was she capable of helping others heal, but she, too, was worthy of healing. The rush of empowerment coursed through her veins, illuminating pathways she hadn't considered before. With renewed determination, she sought more opportunities to expand her knowledge in public health, examining ways to apply her heart for advocacy, not just as a side project, but as a potential career shift. She began to study community health initiatives, realizing that education could be a powerful tool to change lives. With each lesson she prepared, a new layer of her own identity was emerging. While Jake's encouraging presence lingered in her thoughts, she understood her focus needed to shift inward. She could no longer let her decisions hinge solely on past relationships or the need for validation from others. But the tug on her heartstrings from her ex weighed heavily. Was it cowardice to turn her back on someone who once meant the world to her? Or was it a courageous act of self-preservation? Those questions echoed in her mind like an unresolved riddle. The impact of choosing Jake over her past screamed in stark contrast to the lessons embedded in her new purpose. It was time to confront her fears. As Sarah prepared for her next class, she stumbled upon an unexpected dilemma. There was a health fair scheduled at the hospital that her ex would be attending. He had been involved in organizing it, a tantalizing opportunity for them to reconnect amid a swirl of shared acquaintances. But it also presented the risk of being pulled back into a narrative she desperately sought to escape. The day of the fair arrived. Sarah felt the weight of her decision pressing against her, mixing apprehension with exhilaration. Would she approach him, or would she tread a path of determination, prioritizing her own growth over the seductive pull of familiarity? This was not just about love. It was a matter of forging her own identity that had lingered obscured amid the pain. With every step toward the hospital, uncertainty loomed, but so did the possibility of growth. Deep down, Sarah knew she had to confront her past head-on, not just for herself, but for the life she envisioned moving forward. That decisive moment felt imminent, and Sarah prepared herself for whatever awaited her beyond those doors. Little did she know, the fair would turn into a crucible that tested her resolve in ways she had never anticipated. The atmosphere inside the hospital was electrifying, vibrant with the chatter of attendees mingling with the scent of diverse culinary offerings. Sarah took a deep breath as she passed the entrance, her heart racing with a blend of excitement and trepidation. She could see Jake at the far end, animatedly speaking with a group of health professionals, his laughter echoing faintly through the din. For a moment he seemed untouched by the complexities of their past, his charm radiating effortlessly. But as she navigated through the crowd, Sarah concentrated on her purpose. The lessons learned with Mr. Thompson guided her forward, reminding her that this day wasn't merely about reconnecting with Jake. It was about asserting her identity and stepping firmly into the life she was crafting for herself. Distraction was a tool, a means to avoid the confrontation looming ahead. She stopped to talk with colleagues she admired, exchanging innovative ideas and discussing their various projects. Each voice of encouragement reinforced her determination. Yet, just beyond the laughter and animated discussions, the familiar silhouette of Jake tugged at something deep within her. It was pivotal for her to remain focused. She had spent countless nights battling her feelings, and although the void left by Jake still felt significant, the need for her own growth prevailed. She wandered to a booth focused on mental health awareness, curious to learn about new resources that could aid her burgeoning interest in public health advocacy. There, standing quietly among pamphlets and information sheets, was a woman named Lisa. Their eyes met, and Lisa smiled warmly, gesturing toward the booth. A lot of people underestimate the power of mental health in community health. You look like someone who really gets that, she said keenly. Flattered yet slightly taken aback, Sarah shared her journey of connecting with patients. It's crucial, really. I feel like so many overlook the emotional aspect of healing, Sarah replied, the words flowing as if a dam within her had burst. Lisa nodded earnestly, weaving anecdotes about her own experiences. As they spoke, Sarah felt invigorated by the connection. The dialogue served as an anchor, pulling her attention away from Jake and grounding her in the purpose she aspired to fulfill. But the gravity of the moment was interrupted when Sarah noticed Jake approaching. Clad in a polished suit, he exuded the warmth of an old friend, but also represented an unresolved chapter of her life. The conversation with Lisa faded to the background as he reached her, a smile brightening his features. "Sarah, I didn't think I'd see you here," Jake exclaimed, as if the words themselves were embracing her. "Just checking out some of the health initiatives," she replied, trying to keep the apprehension from tainting her tone. His presence threatened to drown her newfound conviction, and Sarah felt the weight of past decisions creeping back into her consciousness. "I'm glad you came," he said, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his composure. "There's something I wanted to talk to you about." Her mind raced. The urgency of the moment eclipsed her senses. Was she ready to engage in this conversation? To potentially dilute the independence she had begun to form? The connection she had nurtured today with Lisa felt fragile, and she didn't want to jeopardize it by falling back into old patterns. As the tension heightened, the impulse to flee swirled alongside the longing to stay and address the complexities that lay between them. This was the crucible she had been forewarned about, the possibility of losing ground in her personal development by confronting unresolved feelings. Just as Sarah prepared to respond, her gaze caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson approaching from the edge of the fair, a knowing smile flickering across his face. In that moment, the choices that lay ahead became clearer. She could define her path, confronting Jake not through pain but from a place of empowerment. The looming question weighed heavily on her. Could she transform this encounter into a defining moment rather than a setback? With Mr. Thompson's words resonating in her mind, she inhaled deeply and made her choice, one that could illuminate a future undefined by the past. As Jake stood before her, anticipation tingling in the air, she prepared to speak, intent on shaping this moment into the catalyst her journey needed, without losing sight of who she was becoming. But the words she sought never found their way to the surface. An unexpected revelation halted her. What had she yet to discover about herself in this pivotal moment? Sarah stood before Jake, a storm of emotions swirling within her. The urgency of his presence was undeniable, yet the air crackled with an electric tension that threatened to fracture her resolve. She could feel her heartbeat thundering in her chest, a stark reminder of the vulnerability that came with confronting the past. As she shifted her gaze from his familiar features to the brightly colored booth behind him, she sought clarity amidst the chaos. "Is there something specific you wanted to talk about?" she finally managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The simple question seemed to hang in the air, challenging him and herself to confront the weight of their history. Jake hesitated, his confidence flickering. "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us," he began, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that drew her attention to the boyish charm that still lingered despite the years. "I know we've both grown since then. I wanted to see how you're doing." The sincerity in his voice stirred something within Sarah, an echo of the affection they once shared. But there was a new voice too, one that was growing louder, reminding her of the journey she had embarked on. She had learned to find strength in vulnerability, to wield it like an armor. "I'm doing well, actually," she responded, carefully measuring each word. "I've been focusing on my advocacy work, taking steps to shape my own path." Jake's eyebrows lifted in surprise, and for a fleeting moment, she saw admiration flicker in his eyes. It empowered her. "That's great to hear. You always had a way of finding your purpose," he said, warmth spilling into his tone. "I want to help people too. I've been taking some classes on public health." His enthusiasm was palpable, an echo of their shared mission from days gone by. But it struck Sarah like a sudden gust of wind. This was a moment of discovery, not just for him, but for her. She realized that they had both been nurturing separate identities, yet their past bound them in intricate ways that were both comforting and stifling. "You know, Jake," she began, her voice gaining strength, "it's important that we don't lose sight of what we individually need. Together we shared something powerful, but it's also crucial that we focus on who we are apart." The weight of her words settled between them, a deliberate shift in their conversation. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. His eyes searched hers, perhaps seeking a flicker of the connection they once had, but now it was buried beneath layers of growth and new understanding. "Are you saying that you don't want to explore what's between us any further?" he questioned, genuinely perplexed. Sarah took a deep breath, absorbing the question. "I think it's more about understanding what we can learn from each other as we are now, rather than trying to rekindle something we both know has changed." The decision felt liberating. She was confronting the past, yet refusing to be bound by it. As the words settled, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. This was not simply a confrontation or an emotional reckoning. This was a defining moment. By recognizing their histories without letting them dictate the present, she was paving her way toward a future of possibility. Jake nodded slowly, absorbing her perspective. "I can respect that, I really do," he replied, though the slight tremor in his voice suggested that acceptance might take time. An unexpected calm washed over her, but as she turned to leave, a prickle of anxiety flared in her chest. Would this resolution endure, or would their earlier dynamic rear its head again? Just as she stepped away, she felt a gaze on her back and turned to see Mr. Thompson, his expression reflecting pride. Was that approval she saw there? Suddenly, a thought struck her. Could she harness this clarity not just for herself, but to mentor others navigating similar waters? The idea lingered tantalizingly at the edge of her consciousness, tempting her to explore further. As Sarah walked away, her heart still thudded with a mix of exhilaration and unease. This was a new chapter, one not heavily influenced by the shadows of the past. But could she really commit to guiding others in their own journeys and secure her own path to empowerment? As thoughts swirled in her mind, Sarah resolved to take action. Her mission was shifting, and she could feel the first glimmers of a larger purpose emerging on the horizon. But what would that transformation require from her, and could she fully embrace it? These questions hung heavily in the air, drawing her toward a new beginning, one which was pulsating with uncertainty, and perhaps the promise of more profound revelations ahead. The sun filtered through the window of Sarah's small apartment, casting warm patterns across the floor. She stared at the blank pages of her journal, the weight of the previous conversation with Jake echoing in her mind. Today was supposed to be a day of reflection, yet her thoughts began to spiral. What if she truly did possess the capacity to help others? The realization ignited an unexpected thrill within her. She leaned forward, fingers poised over the blank page, the ink flowing like her thoughts, rapid and unrefined. As she scribbled down her ideas, she began outlining a potential workshop aimed at those dealing with heartbreak and seeking empowerment. The ink transformed into a rough sketch of her vision, a roadmap toward helping others navigate their journeys. But with each pen stroke came a creeping doubt. Who was she to guide anyone? She thought of her own healing process. Her journey felt so convoluted, so ongoing. Wouldn't they see through her facade? She wrestled internally, the sense of inadequacy fighting against her burgeoning resolve. But then she thought about recent events, her newfound understanding of growth, and her conversation with Jake. Maybe her tumultuous path had equipped her with insights valuable to others. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Mr. Thompson. "Sarah, I've been meaning to talk with you," he began, enthusiasm palpable in his voice. "I have a few ideas that could really mesh with what you're exploring. Want to meet up?" "Yes, absolutely," she replied, excitement bubbling within her. Their meeting could either solidify her direction or challenge her further. Either way, she found herself craving guidance, the push she needed to step into this new role. Later that afternoon, as they settled into a local cafe, she felt a blend of anticipation and apprehension. "So, what's your vision for this workshop?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, eyes gleaming with curiosity. "I want to create a space where people can come together, share their stories, and learn how to utilize their experiences to empower themselves," she explained, her heart racing. "It will be more than just healing. It has to center around growth and self-discovery." A nod of understanding from Mr. Thompson filled her with confidence. "That's powerful, Sarah. Being vulnerable in that way, sharing not just the hurt but the lessons learned, can inspire others. You've walked through the fire. That gives you a perspective that others don't have." His encouragement made her resolve harder, but could she truly deliver on that promise? The thought clung to her like a shadow. Over the next few days, she immersed herself in preparation, refining her ideas and structure. However, doubt soon crept back in, gnawing at her confidence. What if she couldn't relate to participants? What if she faltered under the weight of their emotions? Each question felt like a tether pulling her down, yet her drive kept her pushing forward. One evening, as she practiced her presentation in front of her mirror, the reflection looked back at her with uncertainty she hadn't expected to see. Was she really ready to take on this role? She found herself at a crossroads, leap into this new realm of the unknown, or retreat to the safety of her past experiences. Staring at her reflection, she asked herself the pivotal question. What did it mean to embrace her fears and move into the unknown? If she coalesced her journey into something tangible, could it truly inspire transformative change in others? The fear was real, yet the possibility pulsed through her veins, propelling her forward. As the outline of her workshop crystallized in her mind, excitement surged through her. This was her moment. Could she step into the role of mentor without compromising her integrity? The stakes were high, and clarity came muddled with fear. The next morning, invigorated by a blend of anticipation and anxiety, Sarah reached for her phone to call Jake. She wanted him to be the first to know that she was ready to face her fears, both personal and professional. She dialed, this time not as an echo of the past, but as a force eager to confront the future. Just as he picked up, she heard a voice, a familiar tone, suffused with warmth, yet laced with tension. "You're sure about this, Sarah? There's no turning back." The words hung in the air, resonate with both promise and challenge. At that moment, Sarah realized she was teetering on the edge of transformation. The question loomed larger than herself. Was she prepared to redefine her future, despite the uncertainty that lay ahead? With her heart racing and the outline of her purpose drawing near, she knew the time for action was upon her. But would she have the courage to take that leap into the unknown? The answer felt as fragile as a flickering flame, yet it beckoned her dangerously close. The weight of Jake's question lingered in Sarah's mind as she ended the call, her heart a cacophony of trepidation and excitement. Would she truly leap into this unknown territory, risking the status quo that had kept her comfortable yet stagnant for so long? The answer lay far beyond mere thoughts. It began to shape into action. Determined to develop her workshop, Sarah transformed her anxieties into structured plans. She had spent countless hours pondering her vision, each reflection amplifying her self-doubt. But now, she knew she had to embrace the potential of her experience, not as a polished expert, but as someone armed with hard-won lessons. This nuanced understanding forged a new facet of her identity. Empowerment wouldn't stem from perfection. It would arise from authenticity, from being unafraid to show her vulnerabilities alongside her strength. She sensed that her journey could weave into the narratives of others, ripe for transformation. With renewed vigor, she drafted an outline to share during her next meeting with Mr. Thompson. The framework would include activities focused on healing through storytelling, group discussions fostering real connections, and exercises that encourage participants to confront their fears. Yet, as she crafted her plans, the doubts returned, a reminder of the imposter syndrome that lurked in her subconscious. Who was she to claim a place as a mentor of any sort? Would her own struggles overshadow her potential to inspire? She expected her heart to race with excitement, but it often fell into familiar patterns of anxiety, slipping through her fingers like sand. In an effort to quell these spirals, she turned to her journal once again. By detailing her fears of inadequacy, she hoped to strip them of their power. Scribbling pages filled with her insecurities became a ritual. Each entry carved deeper grooves of self-awareness within her. She began to realize that part of her healing journey rested in embracing the unpredictable nature of growth. Her evenings transformed into a refuge for personal exploration. As she focused on shaping her workshop, she stumbled upon old photographs tucked away in a drawer, memories from a time when heartbreak felt insurmountable. She rifled through the images, faced by potent reminders of her past. Each picture became a vessel of learning, triggering fleeting emotions and inviting reflection. What had those moments taught her? How had she navigated the remnants of those experiences? She noted the strength in resilience, the resilience that had prompted her to reconsider the narrative of her life, prompting an internal switch from victimhood to empowerment. As the initial excitement of her plans grew, so did her resolve to share these discoveries openly. Every journal entry became fodder for her workshop materials, each lesson a stepping stone toward not only her evolution, but also to aid in the journeys of others. She could be the voice she once yearned for in her darkest moments. Finally, the day arrived when she would meet with Mr. Thompson again. This time, she walked into the cafe armed with pages of plans that felt vulnerable yet vital. Nerves clamored within her, but she felt a surge of determination ripple through. This meeting was not just about validation, it was about her future, crafted with intention. As Mr. Thompson arrived, the anticipation in his eyes fueled her confidence. "So what have you got for me?" he asked. Taking a deep breath, Sarah laid out her vision, her heart racing as each point resonated with her commitment to authenticity. She asked for his feedback, not just as a mentor but as a future ally in helping others. "Your passion is undeniable," he remarked, nodding thoughtfully as he flipped through her ideas. The moment was charged with an energy she hadn't fully encompassed until now. She was stepping into her power. But just as she began to envision the success of her workshop, Mr. Thompson's expression changed subtly. A flicker of concern passed through his eyes. "Have you fully considered the emotional toll this might take on you? You're going to be diving deep with others." Her heart sank for a moment, uncertain. Was she truly prepared for that depth of connection, that emotional demand? As anxiety began to claw at her, she realized that her journey had only just begun. The leap she now stood on the edge of felt higher, and far more uncertain than she'd anticipated. Maybe she had not yet glimpsed the full extent of her own vulnerability. But could that fear actually lead to an empowering revelation? This was the turning point. She confronted the notion. The beauty of transformation lay not solely in outcomes, but in the courage found in the depths of authentic connection. "I'm ready," she replied firmly, though doubt simmered beneath the surface. "But I need to ensure I'm doing it for the right reasons." As they delved deeper into her plans, she understood the journey before her would not only reshape her life, but would demand an essential confrontation with her own past. Even as the conversation extended, the knowledge of her looming emotional thresholds felt both risky and exhilarating. Would embracing these truths elevate her to a place where teaching could thrive? Would she be able to support others while honoring her own scars? In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah realized the next chapter of her life beckoned. Would she find strength in vulnerability, or would that very charge unravel her resolve? The time had come to face not just the participants, but the core of her own identity. The challenge would lead to either transformation or retreat. The worry loomed, but within the depths of fear lay the seeds of growth. She took a deep breath, sensing that soon there would be no more turning back. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah left the cafe, her head swirling with the gravity of what she had just proposed. The flicker of concern in Mr. Thompson's eyes was still etched in her mind, a constant reminder of the emotional demands that lay ahead. She was teetering on the edge of a new beginning, and the thrill of it mingled with dark undertones of doubt. As she walked home, the world felt sharper, every sound amplified. A bus rumbling past, a child giggling in the proximity, and a couple arguing heatedly on the street corner. Each distraction drew her further into her own mind, a tempest of thoughts gathered in a swirling vortex. Did she have the strength to navigate the depths of others' pain while confronting her own? The weight of uncertainty grew heavier, sinking into her chest. Arriving home, she sank onto her old couch, barely noticing the clutter surrounding her. The dim light flickered as she grabbed her journal, an anchor in the chaos. Words flowed, tumbling onto the pages. She wrote about vulnerability, about fear and the necessity to lead with authenticity. What defined her journey was the truth of those moments, the agony of heartbreak and the soaring triumphs that occasionally punctured through the fog. In those pages, she confronted her experiences, the grief of lost relationships, the bitterness of betrayal, and the slow, painful climb towards self-acceptance. Her pen created a vivid landscape of turmoil and resilience, each stroke a testament to her capacity for growth. It felt cathartic, liberating, like unshackling an unseen weight from her spirit. Flipping through her notes from Mr. Thompson, she also reconsidered his questions. Should she attempt to prepare herself mentally and emotionally for the wounds of others? The idea of holding space for those stories, exposing their vulnerabilities to her while she was still grappling with her own, was daunting. Yet was she not in the midst of doing exactly that? Each journal entry had revealed a hidden strength. Perhaps those scars she wished to hide could, in fact, serve as stepping stones. As a plan began to solidify within her, Sarah resolved to turn her fears into frameworks for healing. She crafted a new section for her workshop centered on the importance of self-love and boundaries, not just for others, but for herself. It was crucial to respect her limits while also fostering connections. Preparing emotionally could enrich her capacity to empathize, allowing authenticity to be the guiding beacon of her workshop. The process felt freeing, akin to building a roadmap where she wouldn't just be leading others, but discovering her own path alongside them. Each theme she wove into her workshop outline emerged from deeply seated experiences, ensuring it could resonate powerfully. The following day, Sarah organized an informal gathering with a few close friends. They sat in a circle, laughter mingling with serious conversations about relationships, identities, and hopes for the future. The evening, rich with shared stories, provided a vigorous reminder of the collective journey they undertook. It wasn't merely about personal struggles. It was about finding solidarity in vulnerability. As she watched her friends express their fears, she drew courage from their shared humanity. They were all works in progress, continually evolving. In those moments, Sarah realized that true empowerment swung on the pendulum of connection, dynamic and raw, interspersed with the humanity of shared experiences. Stepping back as a facilitator instead of an all-knowing authority, she could offer space for exploration. The workshop began to take shape, not as a platform to dispense her accepted wisdom, but as a collaborative experience where she and her participants would learn and grow together. But beneath the budding excitement remained an undercurrent of trepidation. Would others be willing to cross that fragile boundary, to venture into the raw and unpolished side of healing? And more importantly, Could she navigate those uncharted waters without being overwhelmed by her own past? As she sat pondering these questions, a sharp ambition ignited within her. This revelation meant embracing her emotional truths rather than shying away from them. The essential challenge awaited, pressing her to find the balance between vulnerability and strength. The next day would be critical. It would involve gathering feedback from her friends on the workshop structure, and gauging their reactions could either solidify her vision or unearth fears that would linger. Would she discover the connection she sought, or would she stumble back into doubt's familiar embrace? With her heart racing, Sarah prepared for what lay ahead, knowing the answers would hinge upon honesty and courage. Would this journey confirm her instincts or reshape her understanding of vulnerability entirely? The next morning, Sarah awoke to a sense of both dread and excitement, her thoughts swirling like leaves caught in a brisk autumn wind. Today's informal feedback session felt like a high-stakes gamble, teetering between her aspirations and her internal chaos. As she brewed her coffee, the fragrant steam mingled with the reminiscence of last night's laughter, slicing through her doubts for a brief moment. Each sip was a ritual, a grounding source that momentarily silenced the apprehensions clamoring for her attention. Yet, as she readied her materials, her notes, worksheets, and printed outlines, an uneasiness settled back in. Would her friends understand the depth of what she was trying to accomplish? Could they really see her vision of vulnerability as strength? The specter of self-doubt loomed, twisting her stomach into knots. When her friends arrived, laughter and light chatter filled the room, creating a warm cocoon that enveloped Sarah. She took a moment to observe their faces, noting the familiarity that rendered their presence both comforting and nerve-wracking. As they settled in, she began the session, her voice tinged with uncertainty but punctuated by conviction. Thank you all for being here. Today I want to share what I've been working on, my workshop idea, and hear your thoughts. This is just the beginning, and your honesty is crucial. As she spoke, the words intertwined with her energy, her hopes, and her fears. It felt liberating to articulate her vision aloud, yet she was acutely aware of her own vulnerability hanging in the air. They listened intently as she outlined her plans, sprinkling in anecdotes from her own life, allowing her personal experiences to illuminate her points. As their feedback rolled in, Sarah sat quietly, absorbing their words like a sponge. Some were enthusiastic, nodding along and expressing excitement about her focus on self-love and boundaries. Others were cautious, questioning her ability to foster a safe space given the emotional weight involved. The latter feedback stung. Could she balance her own struggles while guiding others through theirs? Sarah, one friend Julia gently interjected, you know we care about you, but are you certain you're ready to navigate these intense topics? It can get really heavy. That question, laced with concern, struck deep. It opened a door she'd tried to keep closed, evoking the shadows of past disappointments. Her instinct was to defend herself, to assert that her experiences qualified her. Yet beneath the surface, doubt began to creep in. What if Julia was right? What if she was hastily stepping into a role that could unravel her? Taking a breath, Sarah responded, I believe healing can be collective. I don't have to be perfect to guide others. It's about mutual support, right? But I also realize I must be careful. I need to manage my own emotions alongside theirs. The honesty of her admission shifted the atmosphere somewhat, and a few heads nodded in understanding. This was unfamiliar territory. Could she openly admit her fragility while leading this endeavor? It was a balancing act of uncharted proportions. The conversation continued, a rich tapestry of perspectives emerging. Some friends recalled their own struggles, sharing how vulnerability had transformed their relationships and built confidence. Each story illuminated a crucial detail about the human experience, reinforcing Sarah's conviction. This was more than a workshop. It was a shared journey, an exploration of both camaraderie and individual truths. But as Sarah engaged with the conversation, she couldn't shake the looming concern of whether she'd be capable of managing the emotional fallout, should it arise. As the session wrapped up, her friends' feedback coalesced into momentum, a blend of enthusiasm and apprehension. Sarah felt invigorated yet drained. They believed in her vision and urged her forward, but their words also echoed the doubt she fought within herself. Her heart raced. Could she truly foster this environment without being swept away by the currents of her own past? In the silence of her thoughts post-gathering, clarity sifted through her uncertainty. Yes, acknowledging her vulnerabilities could empower others in ways she hadn't anticipated. But could she effectively guide them through the labyrinth of healing without being further ensnared herself? These unresolved questions twisted in her mind as she picked up her journal later that evening, seeking refuge in familiar words. Each entry was now interspersed with the weight of collective aspirations mixed with personal truths. With a new determination, she scribbled her revised workshop outline, filled with intentions not to shield herself from emotions, but to embrace and navigate them as a means of authentic connection. The path ahead wasn't merely about leading, it was about exploring the depth of shared pain and growth together. As she penned the last words, a call came through her phone. Mr. Thompson, eager to discuss the workshop over coffee. A surge of anticipation coursed through her. This could bring the structure she craved. But the instincts of hesitation clung to her again. Would he validate her efforts or expose her insecurities further? The answer loomed closer, teetering on the brink of revelation. Would this meeting clarify her direction or unravel what little confidence she had begun to build? Sarah poured herself another cup of coffee as she sat at her kitchen table, her mind swirling with expectations and anxiety. The impending meeting with Mr. Thompson felt different now, charged with new purpose. Was it a step into vulnerability that could empower her, or a risky plunge into uncertainty? As she contemplated the workshop's framework, she sought clarity, not just for herself but also to determine if her dreams were rigorous enough to genuinely help others. With a light drizzle outside, the world seemed quiet, but within her a storm brewed. Each ticking second felt heavier, marked by the pulsating pressure of her aspirations. Would Mr. Thompson have the insights she craved, or would he amplify her insecurities? At precisely 10, the doorbell rang, slicing through her reflections. The abruptness knocked her out of her reverie, and for a moment she hesitated, caught between the comfort of retreat and the necessity of facing the unknown. Drawing in a deep breath, she opened the door. Mr. Thompson entered with an air of authority sprinkled with generosity. He looked around the room, taking in the notes pinned on her corkboard and the scattered worksheets piled on her table. "Nice space you have here," he said, breaking into a smile that momentarily eased her tension. "Thanks. I'm glad you came," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. As they settled into their seats, Sarah sensed the weight of this encounter. She had prepared meticulously, but found herself grappling with a whirlwind of thoughts. She needed his guidance, yet the thought of exposing her vulnerabilities gnawed at her insides. What if he saw her doubts as weaknesses? "Let's dive in," he urged gently, placing his coffee aside. "Tell me what you're envisioning for this workshop." Opening up her notes, Sarah articulated her vision with growing passion, detailing how she envisioned a space for shared healing and authentic connection. As she spoke, she focused on the core of her mission, vulnerability as a conduit for strength. Each sentence ignited sparks of excitement within her, and she reveled in the moment of clarity forged by her own words. Mr. Thompson listened intently, nodding along. But when she finished, a frown flickered across his features, prompting the butterflies in her stomach to flutter violently. "You have good ideas, Sarah," he began, choosing his words deliberately. "But let's talk about your position when navigating these themes." A tension filled the air, and her heart began to race. "What do you mean?" "Emotions are heavy, as we both know. You're expressing a desire to create a supportive atmosphere, yet you must ensure that your foundation is strong enough for both yourself and the others. Have you considered what happens if you find yourself confronting your own pain during the sessions?" The question settled in her mind, heavy and undeniable. She opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated. There was no denying the truth of his words. The fear she had been grappling with bubbled to the surface again. "I'm aware of the risks. I want to embrace my vulnerability, but, he prodded gently. "But what if it becomes too much? What if I can't manage my own emotions?" Her voice wavered, the rawness of her fear spilling over. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his gaze piercing but compassionate. "Sarah, confronting emotions is a daunting journey, especially when you're in the role of a guide. You need strategies in place to protect yourself while fostering the emotional growth of others." She sat back, absorbing his words. She had been so focused on leading others that she hadn't prepared adequately to guard her own heart. The revelation stunned her. She had needed someone to reflect this critical insight back to her, and here it was, crashing into her like a wave. The challenge was to blend empathy toward herself with the ambition to serve others. Their conversation shifted, increasingly constructive yet unsettling, as they outlined potential pitfalls and effective coping strategies. With each protocol Mr. Thompson suggested, Sarah jotted notes fervently, fueling her growing determination not to falter. But that lingering doubt still clawed at her mind. Could she truly navigate the storm of emotions that such a workshop would inevitably bring up? As their discussion ended, and she felt slightly unmoored yet empowered, Mr. Thompson reached out, placing a reassuring hand on the table. "Trust your instincts, Sarah. You're capable. Just remember, leading doesn't mean you have to be invulnerable." She nodded, trying to absorb the notion. The path was becoming clearer, but the stakes felt higher, making her both anxious and invigorated. Through the tangle of emotions, a kernel of confidence began to take root. Even as she walked Mr. Thompson to the door, the weight of his words resonated within her. His acknowledgement of her potential had ignited a flame, but the deeper currents of uncertainty still lurked beneath. Did she have enough in her arsenal to face off against her own ghosts, while encouraging others to do the same? As he left, Sarah turned back, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. She grabbed her journal one last time, doodling notes from their meeting. There was momentum, but the foundation felt shaky. Would this journey lead her to greater understanding, or would it reopen wounds she had worked so hard to heal? She found herself staring at the blank page, pondering the answer, as fresh possibilities unfolded before her. But what would happen when the weight of her own past loomed larger than she could control? The uncertainty loomed, leaving Sarah on the precipice of exploration, with all the questions still unanswered. The sun cast a vibrant glow over Sarah's apartment, illuminating the notes scattered across the table. Days turned into weeks as she refined her workshop, weaving into the fabric of her plans the lessons gleaned from her conversations with Mr. Thompson and her own reflections. No longer merely a concept, the workshop was now a tangible entity, an embodiment of her evolution. Charting the emotional landscape of healing, Sarah carefully crafted each session to mirror the complexities of her own journey. The foundational theme centered on vulnerability, a concept that now felt like a badge of honor instead of a source of weakness. She envisioned participants not just sharing their stories, but also transforming their narratives into powerful tools for growth, much like she had done. Weeks of preparation culminated in the organization of the first workshop, Healing Through Vulnerability. The title resonated like a drumbeat in her heart, signifying the next pivotal step in her journey. On the day of the workshop, as she set up the room, a flood of nervous anticipation gripped her. Would people resonate with her story? Could she effectively hold space for their pain while managing her own? Each passing moment led to internal turmoil, but she grounded herself by recalling Mr. Thompson's advice, to trust her instincts. As the attendees arrived, Sarah felt a shift. There was a collective energy in the room, a mix of trepidation and eagerness, glimmers of hope shining in their faces. Upon introducing herself, an unexpected comfort enveloped her. The doubts that had haunted her began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of belonging within this shared mission. During the opening circle, she invited participants to share their names and a brief reflection on their personal journeys. As the room came alive with stories, Sarah found herself captivated by the rawness of each account. Every confession echoed facets of her own experience, igniting a surge of empathy that filled the air like electric sparks. When it was Sarah's turn, vulnerability flooded her voice. She shared the heartbreak that had led her to this moment, capturing both the sorrow and the strength that it had beckoned. For the first time, delivering her narrative felt liberating. It was less about showcasing her scars, and more about inviting others to confront their own. The weight of her emotional load no longer pressed down with bitterness. Instead, it felt as though each pain point had become a bridge, connecting her to those eager to cross over to healing together. As discussions deepened into meaningful dialogues about resilience, boundaries, and the power of collective healing, Sarah's vision unfolded in ways she had not anticipated. The participants offered their insights, experiences, and support, creating a safe and nurturing environment that transformed the workshop into a sanctuary of shared growth. In those moments, Sarah recognized her profound personal advancement. Her initial fears had given way to unequivocal clarity. She was no longer a victim of her circumstances, but a champion for her own healing and that of others. The act of leading this workshop solidified her confidence and competence. She was no longer just a nurse in the background, but a passionate advocate for emotional wellness. As the session concluded, participants expressed their gratitude and connection. Tears mingled with laughter as they exchanged contact information, eager to support each other's journeys beyond the boundaries of the workshop. They had collectively sculpted a new narrative, one imbued with empathy and strength. With her heart full, Sarah stood in the aftermath of the workshop. The exhilaration pulsing through her veins reflected a distinct turning point. She had conquered her self-doubt and transformed it into purpose. Each fruitful exchange reaffirmed that she possessed the tools not only to navigate her own healing, but to guide others into the sunlight of their own transformations. Emboldened by her experience, Sarah decided to establish a series of workshops, solidifying her position as an advocate in public health. This endeavor was not merely an aspiration, it was a declaration of her commitment to channel her passion for healing into practical, tangible change. As the days progressed, her workshop drew attention, each session echoing her unique blend of vulnerability and strength. And in those moments of giving and receiving, Sarah proved to herself what she had long denied. She was worthy of the healing she facilitated for others, embodying the very essence of empowerment she sought for herself. Looking into the mirror one evening, Sarah found a renewed sense of identity reflected in her gaze. She exuded confidence, resilience, and professional competence. The journey ahead remained beautiful in its uncertainty, yet she felt prepared, ready to embrace both the struggles and triumphs that would come her way. With a heart open to the future, she firmly resolved to continue pioneering her path in public health, ready to inspire others and lead them through the labyrinth of healing toward self-discovery. As she closed her journal, Sarah smiled. This was the moment she had envisioned. A moment not of arrival, but of endless possibility. A perpetual journey shaped by her growth, filled with opportunities to uplift others. She had truly achieved something remarkable, transforming her heartbreak into an inspiring avenue of true love, love for herself, her passions, and the collective strength of shared humanity. Now, it is your turn to join the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can transform your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories of personal overcoming. Your engagement can make all the difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending and how it resonates with your own experiences. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformative conclusion. This is the moment to embrace our stories and uplift one another. Don't wait even one more second to share.